Good morning, children. Today we'll see friction. Already you have learnt about friction. What is friction? So, friction is the force resisting the relative motion of the surface against each other. So, if you are applying force here, the friction will be acting in the opposite direction. Friction is because of the irregularities of the surface. Can you see the two surfaces when they are coming in contact? These two irregularities of the surface come into contact and they interlock with each other. The friction is caused by the interlocking of the irregularities in the two surfaces. Friction increases if the two surfaces are pressed harder. Now we'll see some effects of friction. Friction enable us to walk, run, write, play, jump, etc. So you can start or stop an object only because of the friction. You can construct buildings, you can fix nail on the wall, all are because of the friction. Friction produces noise, they produce heat, and they also lose energy. So when you swing a pendulum, the pendulum will come to rest because of the resistance offered by the air. So these are the effects of friction. So friction produces heat, friction produces noise, friction leads to loss of energy, and friction enable us to do our day-to-day activity. Now we'll see what are the factors affecting friction. The nature of the surface. So how rough or smooth the surface is, based on that the friction will increase or decrease. Similarly, it depends upon the weight of the object. If the weight is higher, the friction offered is also greater. Now we'll see what are the types of friction. There are four types of friction: static friction, sliding friction, rolling friction, and fluid friction. Static friction is the opposing or resisting force between the two solid surfaces. Now, when you are pushing this object, there is interlocking of the irregularities of both the surfaces. And not only that, the weight of the object also will be pressing the surface harder. That's why the friction here increases. So static friction is the force required to overcome the friction at the instant an object starts moving from rest is the measure of static friction. Next we will see sliding friction. Sliding friction occurs when one surface slides over the other surface. Here are few examples for sliding friction. The force required to keep the object moving with the same speed is the measure of sliding friction. When you compare static friction with sliding force is less than the static friction. This is because when an object starts sliding, the contact points of the object do not get enough time to lock into the contact points of the surface. That's why the object slide, and sliding friction is less than the static friction. Next type of friction is rolling friction. When an object rolls over the surface of another object, the resistance to its motion is called rolling friction. Here you could see the object is rolling and the friction is acting in this direction, the opposite direction. Next type of friction is fluid friction. Fluid friction occurs when a solid moves in a fluid. Here you could see a person is surfing on the liquid in the sea, and a person is cycling. Here is the air resistance, and when a person is surfing, the liquid offers fluid friction. This is also called as drag. The frictional force exerted by the fluid is also called as drag. So when a car is moving, definitely the air will be opposing this force. When the swimmer is swimming, the liquid will be resisting or offering a force against the motion. Similarly, in the aeroplane also, when the aeroplane moves in the forward direction, the air resistance will be acting in the opposite direction. This resistance only we call it as drag or fluid friction. To reduce this fluid friction, the object has to be streamlined, the shape of the object. What is a streamlined body? A streamlined body is the shape of the body which reduces the drag between the object and the fluid. So these are the streamlined body of the submarine, the train, and you could see the fishes, the birds are all streamlined to reduce the drag. Next we'll see lubricants. These are all used to reduce the friction. The substance which reduce the friction are called lubricants. So there are various types of lubricants, that like solid lubricants, semi-solid lubricants, and liquid lubricants. So for polishing this shoe, we are using wax. We use a liquid engine oil. Here we use talc or any powder, soft powder, to reduce the friction. And these are the types of the lubricants. Now we'll see how we can increase the friction. By creating a rougher surface. If both the surfaces are rough, the friction will be higher. When we press the two surfaces harder, when there is no relative motion between the two objects, definitely by removing the lubrications, bearings, and wheels by using viscous fluids. So here you could see the gymnasts, they use some chorus powder to increase the friction. The shoes are fitted with the spikes to increase the friction, and the wheels are threaded to increase the friction. So these are few methods to reduce the friction by using lubricants. By using wheels, we can reduce the friction. These are few examples where you are using lubricants to reduce the friction. And this is ball bearing. This is also used to reduce the friction. So with this, we come to an end of this lesson, children. Please answer the questions. Write the answers in your notebook. Thank you, children.